So, David, you were at the RSA Security Conference, as we've been talking about, all week in San Francisco. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, which I kind of assumed is the case when you go to a conference like this. But you have to walk away from something like this with doom and gloom, or not necessarily look forward to going every year. I mean, there's a lot to learn, but there's also a lot to be afraid of.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'll tell you two really quick stories. One was, you've probably heard of this malware that will infect a hard drive, but it'll actually infect the BIOS of the hard drive. You heard of that one?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, yeah. So you could format the drive a bazillion times. It doesn't matter. It's not going to get rid of the virus.
Awesome.
So I talked to one guy, and this story is amazing. I talked to one guy because I was asking people, what's the worst malware story you ever heard? I was shooting some videos for Cylance. They're a anti-malware company. And I asked them, people are going, what's the worst malware you've seen? And this guy, I was like, oh man, you win. This is the worst. Mm-hmm. He got he bought a hard drive and installed it, whatever, and all of a sudden it stopped working. And he didn't think on it was virus. Think, oh, it's just a busted hard drive. I'll send it back to the manufacturer.
Right.
Like, we would all normally do that. Well, it actually had a virus in it. It was on the BIOS. He sends it back to the manufacturer. It infects all the hard drives at the manufacturer.
Oh my goodness, no
way.
I
was like, oh my. Now
that's
the problem's exponential.
That's insane.
Oh my God, that's insane. And then the other one.
Did they tell him this? Did they say, hey, that hard drive you sent us?
They finally figured it out, yeah. But it's a BIOS level. Yeah. Wow. Oh, geez, it's such a pain. I was like, wow, that's a doozy. Uh-huh. So it's stories like that I would hear that would make me go, oh, geez, like I got more. But the thing that I heard definitely a considerable amount last year, but it was even bigger this year, is just the whole issue of scaling security. Just this problem is so mammoth. It is so intense, and it's just exploding at a level that nobody's brain can wrap around. Mm-hmm. And what are you going to do? You can't throw enough bodies or money at the problem. And so machine learning was a very, very big topic at this conference.
I was just going to say, it seems like the answer to everyone's prayers these days is artificial intelligence. If we don't have the capacity to keep up with it, why don't we just create some artificial intelligence and stick that on the problem?
Yeah, and that can work. And what it does is it stops, the people from doing the mundane tasks.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's the hope.
Frees them up for other more important.
So here's the theory.
Things.
The theory is, and theory and application are two different things. So the theory is, the idea is we have all this machine learning and all this artificial intelligence that will, analyze as much of this information that's coming in, all these attacks using big data, analyze this as much as possible, and only just narrow it. So just at the point that we can't handle it anymore, I hand it off to a smart person like Jason, who can then, analyze it and make sense out of it.
I'm the wrong person.
He's the wrong guy.
I'm the wrong guy.
But that is the theory behind it all. Yeah. And a lot of the vendors on the floor were selling this solution. This was kind of the big solution that was being sold at the time. But as I was talking with Dwayne Melanson, who's of Tripwire, he goes, every year everyone thinks the technology, a vendor's going to solve it. It's all people and process. That if you got to work on your people and process first and foremost to get your problems solved. And there weren't a lot of vendors selling people and process.
Right.
No, there's,
because they're all working on the technology.
Exactly.
That's the easier thing to scale out to people.
I didn't see it so much this year, but I think it was last year I saw more of just sort of the companies, as added service we're offering, selling, we'll train your people to not be so stupid about security, kind of a thing. And I saw a lot more of that.
We need to train a lot.
Or I saw more last year than I did this year.
Right. One topic that you mentioned in prep is the idea that, contrary to popular belief, vendors aren't going to protect us from security intrusions effectively, let's say. Why do you say that? Well,
you can't assume that they're going to say, like I was saying, it's people in process.
It's a convenient thing to do, though. Somebody's going to take care of you.
But the funny thing was, we was talking to some people, and it's amazing, believe it or not, that a lot of people will buy security products and not actually install them.
Huh. Okay.
And that same Dwayne Melanson I mentioned, he said when he heard this, he said, next time you're going to buy a security product and not install it, feel free to buy my product.
But it's seriously, probably install it if you're buying it. So
buy
are you
it.
talking,
That'd be a good idea to install it.
I mean, for the general consumer, are you talking about just like antivirus software?
Well, okay, so this gets to that gets to the topic of what is known. This woman, Wendy Nather, who used to be a 451 researcher, now of Duo Security, she coined this term called the security poverty line, and there's a huge number of individuals and companies that are way below it, way below it. And so this is the sad reality is the security poverty line keeps raising, like the bare minimum you need to stay quote secure, and again, I know that's a vague term to use, keeps rising. But for the individual, you're looking at, your basic antivirus, and also just backups, having good backups offsite, and on-site for that matter. Those are sort of basic things that you need.
And behavior.
As well. But as we have said, behavior alone doesn't cut it.
I wish that it did.
I wish I did. Again, that doesn't cut it anymore.
How exactly are companies failing to protect users? I mean, a lot of companies are focusing on ways, giving tools that empower a user to protect themselves. Are they missing anything glaring? I mean, IoT is one way where maybe they are. But.
Here's the big thing is that most organizations operate in a sense of, well, you work in finance, I work in accounting, that person works in security, that. And so we all have our respective jobs. Mm-hmm. The problem is for security to work, it kind of has to be everybody's job. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like everybody
even the
has to
weakest
worry
link
about
can
it.
open everybody else up to something.
So that's where we get into the whole people and process discussion. It's the need to make people clear that it's everybody's responsibility, everybody's job. That's where, there was a lot of sort of selling of education. Hey, it'd be a good idea if you all kind of trained and understood the importance of this, because it's everybody's job, everybody's responsibility.
Right.
The thing that scared me the most was ransomware. Have you guys talked about this a lot?
Well, yeah, we have. So it's been a big topic all year. We had, of course, a number of stories that were around kind of ransomware hitting hospitals, in some cases hitting police departments. We had a story a couple of weeks ago. It's suddenly, I'm failing to remember it, but another indication of ransomware where they didn't give in and they were just like, you know what, screw it. We've got backups. We're not going to do that.
That what I also learned is that doesn't. So here are the two things, big things I learned about ransomware. It is automated, and you can buy kits. Do it yourself. All you need to get a kit and really low morals, and you could pretty much do. You set up a Bitcoin account and these kits. And it's truly automatic. You set it up and it just goes out and starts hammering people. And it's more just a point, try to hit. And for those people who don't know ransomware, what it does is encrypts the data on your drive. And the idea is that from that, then you have to pay a ransom to get it unencrypted.
Hey, we've got all your data. If you want access to it, you drop this Bitcoin and we'll give it.
Right, you pay the Bitcoin amount again. So therefore, it's completely untrackable, and it's automated. That you set it up, it just keeps going. Because here's the thing: all the previous sort of hacking attempt or hacking processes, which was mostly credit card based, is extraordinarily expensive because it's very manual. The process to do it. Bitcoin isn't, or not Bitcoin, excuse me, ransomware is not utilizing Bitcoin for that matter. So it's actually a very lucrative method. And that's why I heard a little bit about ransomware last year. Of the people that I talked to about just bad malware stories, I would say like 40% of them were telling me ransomware stories. And like what you were just saying, I had stories of people who paid, people who didn't pay and decrypted it, were able to do it. And some people who just gave up and said, forget it.
Walk away from the data. What about people who paid, but they didn't get it unencrypted?
I heard one case of that. But
I'm sure that it happened.
But the other story that I didn't realize is sometimes, and this is not as prevalent, it's usually kind of I hit it and just do it. But sometimes the ransomware will sit dormant for a while and it will infect like multiple versions of backups. Then when it pops, you can't even go to your backups.
Dang, man.
Yeah, I know. It's, again, the scare the crap out of me festival.
Yeah. So I'm assuming, is that the threat beyond ransomware? Like what's next? Is ransomware going forward?
I spoke with a gentleman named Scott Borg who's been doing sort of predictions and research about this for quite some time. And the next wave is far more lucrative, way, way more lucrative. And that's going after financial markets. So he claims that there's evidence of people shorting the airlines just before the 9/11 attacks. And so what could happen is there could be a planned attack on, against some kind of an institution, and organizations could short, meaning, bet that it's going to do poorly, a certain company or certain industry, whatever, and then make some kind of physical attack or digital attack, any kind of attack against them. And so this is now, here's the sad reality. This guy's predictions are pretty darn good. And so this could be and this would make, huge fortunes to be able to do something like this.
I think what we need to do is walk over to the one big technology thing that powers everything and pull the plug. This is frightening me.
Is there one giant plug?
In my perfect world, there's one device that powers all the devices. You just go, you know what, forget it. So obviously we're entering a new year, new administration here in the U.S. We're preparing for many initiatives that are actually going to change in light of that, change things that, that the internet has operated in certain ways, and security and all that kind of privacy, all that stuff. I have to imagine that was a big topic at RSA.
So I was shooting also for the Electronic Frontier Foundation,
right.
Also at both at B-Sides and at RSA. So the nice thing at B-Sides, for those you don't know, it's kind of the more hacker community. Goes to B-Sides, and EFF is usually a sponsor, very involved in it as well. So the love among that community for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, for those you don't know, they fight for digital privacy rights. Huge amount of love. I was surprised that only maybe 40% of the people on the RSA floor that I ran into knew of the EFF. But we talked a lot.
That's surprising.
We talked a lot about privacy. And I asked people what they thought the Trump administration was going to do to protect people's privacy and what they didn't want the NSA to know about them, things like that. Common things that came up, themes that came up was they don't want to know their financial records. They don't want to know their browser history because then they could sort of create a docket on them. They want them to stay off their kids. Lay off my kids. I don't want you to bug in my kids. And then feeling of what they felt the Trump administration, some people, played it politically correct, like, well, they have yet to announce. We don't really know what's going on. And others was like, well, he's a businessman and businesses make more money from the more information they collect from us. And he wants deregulation. Right. So my feeling is he's going to be pro-business and let them collect as much as they want. So it is, and others were like, well, under the Obama administration, there was a lot of, privacy implications there. So
for sure.
They say, it's
a lot of changes.
It's going to change it, but no, the NSA had some major capabilities of what they could go after. A lot of people was like, it's going to be the same as we had the last couple of presidents, so nothing's going to change.
Right. What about the near term, 2017? Was there any talk about like what to expect over the course of this next year?
The big thing is, here was the interesting discussion. This is more on the journalism front point, is the way we're gathering information, because the fact that hacking is now, as you know, from the Russian hack or the supposed or the very well documented supposed Russian hack of the DNC, that hacking is not just financially based, and we've talked about this for quite some time. It's also very much government sponsored efforts, for that matter. That we have to look out for that, and also the fact that hacked information is now a new news source. So I spoke to Joe Mann, who's one of the investigative reporters on security for Reuters, and he said, "Look, we've got 4 different sources of information right now. We've got real news, we've got fake news." We've got hacked information, and we've got hyped news. And you, me, everyone watching, we have to make sense of all of this. That ain't easy. And so this is where all the confusion starts. And we've discussed this, I'm sure, plenty, but all this confusion just creates
confusion.
Nobody can agree on facts anymore.
Right.
It's impossible to agree on a fact.
Well, and it's really hard to hear something and know how you feel about it, because there's always a lingering doubt, or that confusion is such an element. Man, life was so much simpler a few years ago.
When we didn't have the internet.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe what we need to do is get rid of all of our modern PCs, go back to the Commodore 64, and we'll connect to each other with bulletin board services. We'll become a sysop. That's what we'll do. Any final thoughts? Anything that we missed?
No, you know what? In fact, that was all the information that came out of RSA. There was no more. None.
No more.
Nothing else came out.
Good. Because honestly, I don't know if I want to hear anymore. Because
the thing is, I was there for the entire week.
Yeah.
And I absorbed as much as my brain could handle.
Yeah.
Like it was. Yeah. I couldn't handle much more. Oh yeah, that's what the floor looks like.
Nice.
Right there. That was a time-lapse video that my partner Joy Powers produced.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you for diving into RSA. Really appreciate it, because I know we've covered, I think, maybe a story or two that has arisen or been announced through RSA throughout the week, but it's really nice to get a sense of the actual event and kind of, I don't know, the tenor, the general kind of thought, the collective thinking from the floor, because this is such an important thing now.
I would tell you, come back next year, hopefully, to have the same conversation on the Friday at the end of RSA, and I will have completely different stories, because every year it changes so drastically.
Yeah. All right.